I'm too loud, I'm too sensitive, I'm too much, I'm whatever that is, too exuberant, too joyous. And then as adults, we still have some of that conditioning, but we also have some different options that we can look into. You might just look around and establish yourself in your body, establish that you're here, you're doing an inquiry. And one of the really important things when we're doing inquiries is to stay aware that right now we're not in the past, we're in the present moment and we're doing an inquiry. And the inquiry might have some kind of activation. We might feel sensation in our body, we might notice we're holding our breath. So, a big part of our job during the inquiry is to work with the material, but another big part of it is to really monitor our nervous system. What's the response to this? So let's start there. How do the words "you're too much," "you're too loud," "you're too sensitive," how do they land in your body? And you might even be hearing them in somebody else's voice. Often we've heard that many times. So, what sensations come into your body when you hear those words? And are there memories of an age? Maybe you have an image of someone. Um, we don't try to be small because for no reason. We always have a reason for these kind of adaptations for safety. So if you remember that from a really early age, that might be something that was really prevalent during your lifetime. And it might be something that's really affected you, and that's really affected how you engage with other people, how comfortable you feel, how much you care for yourself. It might have an impact on inner critic, that kind of thing. So, as we're just starting into this inquiry, and you might have an age or memories of being told, it might have been at school, it might have been with friends, it might not have been with parents. But what was happening in your environment when you first remember hearing that? So, one of the things, if this is a childhood memory, is were the adults overwhelmed and whose nervous system were you adapting to? So children always want to be in the closest possible connection with their parents or other caregivers because that is how we keep ourselves safe. And if we're not connected, if we're not seen, if we have an adult that's clearly overwhelmed, that feels very dangerous to us. And so then we're going to try to do something to accommodate that. One of the ways we do that is we shrink. If we're told we're too much, then we get to be less or smaller. So, people pleasing is one of those ways that we do that. We might have learned to always be the good little girl or boy, the one who always helped with the dishes, the one who was always, up for a hug, the one who was comforting to our parent, especially if we had a parent who was not functioning all that well. So, if you were to just kind of sit with that for a moment, did you shrink or quiet yourself or contain yourself? And one of the ways to notice that might be how were you with different in different environments? So if you were out riding your bike in the neighborhood, running around with your friends, and you were quite loud and boisterous and shrieking with laughter and having a lot of fun. But then when you think about yourself coming back into the house and that wasn't really appreciated or maybe not even allowed there, just let's sit with that for a moment. What are some of the dynamics of that for you? So we have these patterns. And how did that work for you as a child? And what are we worked with this last week around authenticity. Can we be authentic? Are we really who we are around in different environments around different people? So sometimes we have that feeling inside of us that it really costs us something to hold back and not be who we are. And especially as a child, if there was something going on with us that wasn't acceptable in our environment, that that has a big effect on us inside as well as our behavior. Notice where you are with that. Take a breath. So, what were some of the behaviors that were going on? What was going on that tended to get shut down or criticized? So, what we're looking for here is there might have been a vitality or a liveliness or a goofiness, or you like to tell jokes, or maybe you talked a lot, or maybe you were just like too much in terms of comparison to someone else who was finding that to be too much. So someone whose nervous system couldn't cope isn't isn't a reflection on us. However, it directly impacts us. So what were some of the behaviors that were was it your sense of being alive, joy, creativity, being sensitive, and this is very gender biased. Um, Girls are supposed to be sensitive and people pleasers, and boys are supposed to be tough and not feel anything. So, what are the qualities in you? Do any of those kind of ring a bell? And do you feel like you were misunderstood or something about you wasn't welcome? And maybe you had a really tender heart. And if you ever let yourself show any vulnerability, it was really squashed. That's the way it was in my mother's family. We were teased, they were teased mercilessly if they showed any kind of sensitivity or for me it was I really cared about social justice as I was entering my teens. I remember talking about that one time and really being nailed for it at their place. So what are some of the elements of that that come up for you? And as you're looking at it now, especially with some kindness and compassion for yourself, are those qualities still in your life now? Do you feel more free? Or has the deadening effect of being shut down as a child, is it still somewhat present, quite a bit present? Let's sit with that for a moment. There's a lot of different circumstances that kind of lead to the same experience. More vibrant, while others were more obedient to our religion, too happy, valued joy over somberness. Feel mostly free now, but find triggers often. Yeah, I felt safe at home, but not at school. So, those are some of the elements of our experience. You talk too much. So, why do we do those behaviors? And what's the matter with those behaviors? So everybody has a nervous system, and it's it's difficult to be in relationship with other people because oftentimes what's going on with someone else's nervous system is not what's easy for us. And sometimes we are feeling overwhelmed. If you're a parent and you have children and you're feeling overwhelmed already, and then there's a lot of fighting, or someone's talking a lot, or wants attention. Often parents have this, we started off as it takes a village to raise a child, and then in these nuclear families, often it was an impossible task to really be there for people. So one of the ways that we shut people down is we criticize them or condemn them or make them feel shame, and then often they will go away or they'll be quiet or they'll modify their behavior. And that's an awful dynamic, and yet that's often one of the things at play here. So, as an adult now, and we're looking at that, if that was us, and I think we could probably say it's always us, it's all of us at some times. What is it that was going on, and then also maybe is there a repair that you could make? So we're not wrong, we're not shameful because we're anxious and we have compulsive thoughts. And it might have a really hard effect on somebody who gets very anxious listening to us if we're going on and on about, worst case scenarios. So it doesn't mean that we're bad. It means that we have a nervous system response that's not helpful to us, probably, but also is difficult for somebody else. So if we're really excited, it might not be a nervous system response, it might just be life. But the person that we're talking to and trying to get their attention is just overwhelmed. There's a mismatch of energy there. So we pick up anxiety from other people, and we also co regulate for a sense of safety and peace. So, how did that dynamic play in your life? And notice your body, notice your breath. And it is puzzling, isn't it? Why does somebody want to shut down joy? Why does somebody not want me to be happy? That's a puzzle sometimes. In yoga philosophy, there's a quality sometimes that people will, there's four qualities. One of them is the capacity to be happy for people, for people's good fortune, or for when they're happy, when they're joyous. And that's something that we could cultivate, but that's not necessarily doesn't come natural for everybody. If they're not happy, sometimes people, I remember one of this young person I knew who was 12 or 13, and she would just make it miserable if she was unhappy. And she goes, "Well, I'm unhappy. Why shouldn't everybody else be?" Like, well, I don't know. That's a big question, a big answer, but that was just kind of her view on it. It's like, yeah, how can I how can I be happy if people around me aren't? And then often we squeeze ourselves into trying to make them happier. So if this is something that is relevant for you as well, where you felt I'm the one who has shut down other people, then that's a little bit off topic from what we're working with here today, although it's completely relevant. But just to maybe there's some work there that you could do. Are you shaming yourself? If you have, notice that with people in relationship with you, children, parents, siblings, work, whatever that is, maybe there are some repairs that you could make, or maybe there's some boundaries you could set. Like I'd like to be there for you, but I just can't. I can't be there in the way that you need. Maybe we could look at other ways that you could get support. I can't listen to this all the time, or whatever that might be. So identify what the issue is, and then just see where you go from there. And see, it's really important to reduce the shame, to not let the shame kind of overwhelm us, because we all have these things that about us that are hard for other people, and some things that are wonderful that people really welcome. And that's just kind of one of the ways that it works. So let's take a little bit of a pause here and work with our younger self. So wherever you are, whatever came up for you around that, being told you're too much, feeling like it's too much, what would you, how would you like to connect with your younger self? So it might not be your younger self of childhood, it might be as a young parent, it could be anything. But bring to mind yourself at a younger age and let your adult self now connect with that younger self. And what would you like them to know? What would your younger self like you to know? And continue to work with your breath, relax your body. And one of the things that happens is that we start to police ourselves around this, right? So that could be something that our younger self might say, it was bad enough that my parent was doing that, but then you came along and started criticizing me every time I got out of line. Let's sit with that for a couple of minutes. Let yourself have that connection. Especially if there was some kind of mental illness, depression. It's not necessarily that our parents didn't care about us. It's often that there was something going on that they couldn't handle. Take some breaths. Sometimes that communication is verbal. You might imagine that you're hugging your younger self and saying, I'm sad that that was your experience so much. And, now we're more free. Um, whatever it is you might like to say. A lot of what we did as a child was to belong. We needed to maintain that connection with our parents so that we could feel protected and be safer. So maybe there's something around that as well. How do you now in your life, how do you modify your behavior and your relationships in order to feel more accepted, more welcomed? And as an adult, we can often now really look at that. What is it that could help my younger self, but also help me now? So if I notice that there's judging, if I notice there's an inner critic, if I notice that I just shut down because I'm scared I'm going to be criticized or something like that, then partly we can maybe look at who we're around. Does that happen in all the cases? And so the last couple of weeks, we were really looking at that. How can we be authentic? When can we be authentic and with who? But that's something that isn't an on off switch. That's something that we're always negotiating in our complex relationships. So we're going to complete this with some strengthening. So, how could we turn towards and open up to and feel more comfortable being more joyous, a fuller expression who I am? So, if you were to imagine I'm joyous and strong, I express myself, I don't hold back, I am amazing just as I am. I'm wholeheartedly welcome with all my richness, all my joy of expression. So, saying that, I'm joyous and strong. I'm amazing. Take a breath, feel that in your body. And what might have to change in order for that to be even more true? It probably is already somewhat more true for everybody. As adults, we have a lot more agency, we have more options, more freedom. But is there anything that you're doing now that's kind of sapping that, where you're really containing yourself? It might be around a certain person, it might be at work, um, might be in relationships. What would have to change? Like, what would you want to bring more in? So sometimes it's activities and that make us feel stronger and more vibrant that we have more fun with. And what might you have to let go of or have different kind of boundaries around? So let's take a couple of minutes to really settle into that. So you could more wholeheartedly say, I welcome my joy, my richness, my amazing who I am, my strength. And if you have something going on that other people are finding is too much, like maybe you're feeling really anxious and you do have a lot of catastrophic thinking, or maybe one of the ways that you reduce your anxiety is that you talk a lot, um, which makes other people feel more anxious. So there could be some patterns here that perhaps you could work with. Um, it's difficult. It's complex. All of this, how we came to be as we are. And to really take a look without shaming ourselves, and take a look and go, I do feel depressed, or I do feel anxious. I know I talk a lot. Um, and I can tell that some people are backing away from me because of that. So is it that I need to talk less? Maybe if you're anxiety talking, maybe that would help to find other ways to express and to lessen that anxiety. And maybe the kind of, the relationships that you're in aren't wide enough for you to express yourself. So maybe that's part of the answer, is to look around and, of all the people in the world, and so many of them we can find online now, are there people around who I could just be more of myself with? Maybe you're an artist and you could get into an art class or something. Or maybe you like to line dance and everybody else likes hip hop, or whatever it is. But how are you, like, where do you feel that compression? Like, it's not okay with these people that I'm with, that I am this way. So for me, one of those is being queer. It's really okay with some people and it's really not okay with some people. And that's an ongoing negotiation. How do we manage that? And I'm not going to shut down my queerness to be approved of, and yet I do in subtle ways. I act a little bit different when I'm in a group of other queer people than I do if I'm, in other circumstances where I know it's not as welcome. So we do, as part of the subtleties of, getting along in life and being an adult. But how could we open up our life in ways that would help us be more who we are? So lots of deep breaths. And come back to these words. I am amazing just as I am. I'm joyous. I'm strong. Some people really love me for that. And some people don't appreciate that. They want to shut me down. But if you could imagine an environment where you're really wholeheartedly welcomed for who you are, and you don't have to monitor yourself, you don't have to, hold back on some ways you express, you really just feel free to be who you are. And let's sit with that for a moment. So let all of the other concerns just kind of go to the side for a moment. What would that feel like to be able to express ourselves freely and to know? So part of this is we're welcome enough in our own heart that we don't judge ourselves and we don't shove ourselves under the bus and we don't shove ourselves into a box. So that's part of this. So if other people are judging us, whether it's, our grown children, I have a little bit of that going on sometimes, or siblings or whoever that is, people are judging us. And then can I stay strong enough in myself that I can approve of myself and I can belong to myself and I can wholeheartedly appreciate my strength, my joy, my personality, my quirkiness, all of those things. What does that feel like in your heart as you're kind of opening into that? I think we'll work with that again next week. We'll take this thread of how can I be at home in myself? And what are the elements of that? And to really work with strengthening.